Becky Vanderpool. I'm the Senior Manager of Park Connections with Metro Parks of Butler County. And today I'm super excited to introduce you to Jeff Davis, well-known herpetologist here in the state of Ohio and probably even further. Today we're for a special treat. We're out at Salamander Run, which is typically a closed park area. But I wanted to have Jeff come out and share a little bit with us about spring amphibians and what you might see in some of the open park areas, even if you get a chance to get out and visit the parks.
Okay, so for Salamander Run, the interesting thing here, this is a property that was donated to the park district by the EPA as part of the Fernald settlement. And when the folks from the EPA first came out here and went into the streams that are back in the woods, they found lots and lots of salamanders. And the stream is actually the headwaters of Patty's Run, but it's a headwater tributary stream. So they decided, since it was unnamed, to give it a name. And they named it Salamander Run, and obviously the park is taken on also. They had also considered some name that might involve box turtles, because they saw lots and lots of box turtles here as well. This, in my opinion, this is a true gem. Salamander Run, even though they named it for Streamside Salamanders, it turned out to be a great name because this is the only park district property that has cave salamanders, which is an endangered species in Ohio. It also has southern two-line salamanders. It has redback salamanders. I have seen one slimy salamander here. There are spotted salamanders that were repatriated. I think that may cover it for the salamanders, but it also has a diversity of frogs as well. There are American toads. Today as we've hiked, we've heard spring peepers and northern leopard frogs are coursing. There are green frogs and bullfrogs. There's a permanent pond that has painted turtles and northern water snakes. So there are garter snakes here. There are gray rat snakes. We've seen blue racers here, so it has a diversity of herpetofauna. Herpetofauna are reptiles and amphibians. We're out here today on March 4th, very early in the season, and we have been in the streams and have found streamside salamander eggs. We found adults, we found females that had just laid their eggs last night. We found two-line salamander today. In the past, on the hikes that I have led through here, at this time of year, we find a lot of redback salamanders. So very early in the season, I try to lead this hike in March so that people can have the opportunity to see the streamside salamanders breeding. They're nice, they're pretty big plump salamanders, so people are excited to see them, and oftentimes kind of have this, I never had any idea that there was something like this around here. And it gives them an opportunity, because the streams are so small, we can literally walk on either side of the stream and find streamside salamanders, whereas there's a pond right over here, and spotted salamanders are pond breeders, so to see them you have to put on waders and typically go in at night with flashlights. So this makes a really good hike, because it can be led during the daytime and still find salamanders. It's fantastic for kids. One of the things Becky and I were talking about, I get really excited when kids turn over rocks and find a salamander, because they get so excited. So the park district has lots of great habitat. This one is closed, but certainly there are lots of others that you can go to and hear the frogs coursing this time of year. It's a great outdoor experience.
It's pretty cool to hear the spring peepers even during the day today, because I'm so used to that being more of a dusk type of sound, isn't it?
This time of year, when it's in the 20s at night, you know, we're out here, it's probably like 10:30 or so now, and it just starts to warm up enough that it activates them. But as the weather warms, they'll become much more nocturnal.
Okay.
And if it's a warm night, they're just going ballistic this time of year.
So what would you suggest to protect the animals and the habitats and the amphibians that people might see out in some of the open park areas?
The first thing that I would suggest is please don't touch them. Amphibians, they breathe through their skin, so they absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide through their skin, and that's not the only thing that will pass through their skin. Their skin is extremely permeable, so if you if you've been perspiring and your hands are sweaty, a small amphibian like a spring peeper would probably absorb enough salt that it could be harmful to it. If you've put on cologne or perfume or something, that could be harmful to them. And especially with COVID, people using hand sanitizer, the alcohol residues that would be on their hands, and some of them have essential oils and so forth in them, I think would be harmful also. The other aspect of that is there are two diseases that affect amphibians. One of them is a chytrid fungus that spreads very easily And as a matter of fact, with most of the work that I do, I sanitize my equipment, my boots. You know, if you're willing, if you take a 5% bleach solution and just kind of take a scrub brush and scrub off the bottom of your shoes before you walk through amphibian rich areas, it's actually to the benefit of the animals. The other disease is ranavirus, which spreads through amphibians as well. So if you pick up one amphibian and it happens to be an infected one, and then you put it down and feel like harmless, you go to another pond or you find another animal out in the woods and you pick that up, you may be able to spread that. And the spread is, I get more concerned about the spread for people who go from one site to another. Chances are, if in like this little pond over here, if one or two animals have chytrid fungus, they probably all do. And chytrid fungus is very widespread and is really lethal to amphibians. So, I think the best policy is if you turn over a rock or a log and you see a salamander, the best thing to do is don't pick it up. Take a picture of it, admire it, get pictures so you can identify it if you don't recognize it. When you get home, you can look it up. But please, the best thing to do is just to leave them alone. And the other thing is that because they breathe through their skin, it must remain moist. And the more you handle them, that slime comes off on your hand, and it would kind of be like someone, if you've got fluid in your lungs, it's kind of the same for them. If their skin dries, they can't breathe as readily through their skin. You
mentioned if you're picking up a rock and looking underneath, of course we stress with some of the creeking programs we've done, the importance of laying a rock back down gently so that we're not smashing or harming anything underneath it.
Yep. It's
anything else?
Yeah, somebody's house. Even if there's not a salamander or something under it, there are probably things that the salamanders eat that are living under it. And trying to, when you put it back down, is try to leave a space. Don't step on it and try to smash it into the ground, because those spaces under those rocks are absolutely essential, especially to salamanders, because it's a moist place where even during dry periods, their skin can remain moist.
The sights and sounds of spring amphibians were a treat on this pre-spring morning. The first that we came across were the Streamside Salamander eggs on the bottom of this rock in the creek.
This particular species uses streams, and obviously they don't deposit their eggs in masses. Instead, the female goes under this rock, lays on her back, and then kind of lifts her pelvis and squeezes out an egg and deposits it, then scoots forward a 1/4 inch or so and lays another.
You can see the way they're spaced out then.
And so this species has a sister species called the smallmouth salamander, from which streamsides evolved. And the thought is that the lack of vernal pools might have been the selective force that drove this species to adapt to laying their eggs on the underside of the rock. And I will find, occasionally I'll find streamside salamander larvae in a pond. So if they find a pond, they'll use it. And it's really difficult to tell the larvae from any other. So typically what I do is have them analyzed genetically to determine what species they are. Streamside salamanders grow to about 4.5, 5 inches. Hopefully we'll find one so you can get a good picture of them. They're these really plump, they've got a really short face. They're easy to identify. If you drew a line between their eyes to the tip of their snout, that distance is just minuscule. So it makes them really easy to identify. And their color is, hopefully we'll see one and you'll see they're kind of nondescript gray, but they look like they've got frosting on them, which is one of the things that helps identify them, along with the size of their snout. They spend almost the entire year underground. They're in the family Amphibians, which are the mole salamanders. So being underground, their diet consists of subterranean insects and larvae and so forth, earthworms. And because they're so nondescript and we don't see them at the surface, there's very little that's really, really exciting about them during the non-breeding season. And it's true for all of the mole salamanders. This is the only time of year. So we're what, March 3rd, 4th? This is the only time of year you really see them at the surface very often. Typically they'll find a crayfish burrow under a rock. One of the things that I like to do is, if I can find a nice flat rock and I turn it over and there's no salamander but there's a crayfish burrow, I will come back to that rock time and time again, and typically I'll find one at some point that has surfaced.
It was fun to see the salamander eggs, but even more exciting to see the salamander herself.
See that short little head?
Mm-hmm.
So she laid last night. She's done. She's resting up, and then she'll, when the weather's suitable, she'll find her place back up here on the bank. So if you look at these eggs, they're not nearly as swollen as the others. They're much smaller. They haven't absorbed water, but probably if we come back and look at these tonight, they would look a lot more like the other ones. And you can see the vegetal pole, the yolk, on the bottom of those eggs. Again, you can see that they're deposited in the stream in shallow water so that she was able to flip over and deposit those eggs.
Spring peepers, like the one pictured here, is another early spring amphibian. When the ponds and wetlands thaw, the spring peepers will become quite vocal. And vocal they were while we hiked today. While we didn't get to see one, we sure did hear them. So thanks for joining me today on this virtual Spring Amphibians hike with Jeff Davis. I want to give a big thanks to Jeff for his time he spent here with us today at the park, for the time he spends leading programs, and also just for the expertise and knowledge that he shares with Metro Park so generously. Again, thank you, Jeff. I especially enjoyed getting to see the Streamside Salamanders, their eggs, and to hear the spring peepers chirping while we had at the park today. For other ways to log off, shut down, and get outside on your own out in the Metro Parks of Butler County locations, or for upcoming program information, visit yourmetroparks.net. Thank you.